The game Trampoline Park was released in 2020 by designer Nima Hekmat and Iranian publisher Soren Game Studio, then re-released in 2022 with new graphics, but as far as I know, unchanged gameplay. Now, I don't recall seeing a game previously with a trampoline park setting. It's a unique setup for what the game is. What's interesting is the gameplay both fits this setting perfectly and is a bit of a mismatch with the energy conveyed by these characters on the cover. It is a thinky game that is a bit hard to get into at first because it's difficult to see the ramifications for everything that you're trying to do and how to get pieces where you want them to go. Let me show you how it works. Here's the layout for Trampoline Park, no matter the player count, 2 to 4. You place the white tile in the center of the table, shuffle the other tiles face down, and lay them out at random in this familiar Catan shape. Note that there are 3 tiles of each color and 3 tiles of each letter. And to win the game, you must control 3 spaces of the same color or letter with your team. There are 6 teams in the game, no matter the player count, and you are going to secretly control one of these teams. Or rather, you are going to own that team, but you can move anyone in play. That's up to you how you want to use these characters. Note that the team colors do not correspond to tile colors. There's yellow and yellow, but there's no connection between them. So you get one of these cards at the start of play, keep it secret, try to deduce who other people are. Place the referee on one of the jumping in points, that's the center hexagon on each side, and then you place a token at random from the top of the stack in clockwise order from the referee. So you arrange the colors of these at random, you shuffle them all within each stack. There are tokens valued 2 to 5 with a few 5s, but mostly 2s and 3s, a few 4s as well. Place them out and you're set to go. On a turn, you get 6 energy to spend to enter someone from outside the board onto the board. So I could take this token. It costs 2 energy to pick it up and 1 energy to enter it into that initial space. And then you can move it in a straight line from that space. So it costs 2 energy, 3 energy, 4, 5, 6. Or 2 energy, 3 energy, 4. Or 2 energy, 3 energy, and just leave it there. If I have energy left unspent, I take tokens and put them in my reserve and keep them. And I can use it on a future turn should I want to move someone and it takes more than 6 energy to make that happen. So the next player goes 3, 4, 5. Okay, so they spent 5, they get 1 left. Maybe this player 2, 3. This one 2, 3. You often want to take energy at the beginning of the game because it allows you to plan for bigger moves. After everyone has taken a turn, you rotate the referee 1 space clockwise. You then put out new people starting from where the referee is located and going clockwise around the board. So you can see the value of all the tokens that are coming in next, but beyond that, you don't know. So you have some ability to plan based on who's coming up next. And you know the referee will be here, and you know a white token is going to go there, and a yellow one there, and so on. Now, you rotate the first player position. There is no marker. We were using a Celica pack just to have something because it is very easy to lose track of whose turn it is because it's a thinking game and sometimes you just dive in and start thinking. And there's some ricochet action on here, so it gets a little complicated at times. So now the next player goes, right? I took the first action, this player goes. Maybe they just put this one 4, 5, and they have 1 left over. Maybe this person wants to move this 5, and they want to bounce someone. So you're in a trampoline park, and all of these spaces represent individual trampolines. The people who are moving in don't bounce on their own. They're bouncing other people as long as they convey sufficient energy into a trampoline. Yeah, it's a bit tricky, but you pick up this character, it's 5, this is 6, 7, 8. We'll assume the player that moved this has some extra energy. They spend 2 energy, they get change. They spend 8 energy to put this character here. And when a tile lands on a space, it conveys bouncing energy equal to the amount spent to get it there minus 3. That's the effort to move through the board. It's always 3 no matter how many spaces it goes. So lands here, the bounce energy is 5. This token is 5 or less, so it bounces to an adjacent space. If it bounces somewhere where there's other tokens, it does not bounce those tokens as well. One exception is the white space in the center. We'll save that for later. So bounces here, this token goes over here. Previously, the blue character, the blue team, had control of this space because it has a value of 2 on it. Now the white team has control of it. Okay, so the player who did that put a yellow one here and put a white one here, so maybe they're one of those 2 colors. Who knows? You're gonna watch their actions and see what they do. If you would land, let's see where I can take some examples here. So if I move the 5, bum, 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 I've got 5 bounce energy. I can move this 3 or this team that adds up to 4. Tokens of the same color are considered part of a team. You can think of them as holding on to one another, and if you want to bounce them, you have to bounce them all. So I can bounce either the white one or the 2 green ones, but not both. If we had this here, then I could bounce only the 2 green because this team has a higher weight, or it needs more energy than what I have. Okay, if we had something like this, then I could do either the green or the white or the black because I have 5 energy to spend bouncing them out. Okay, move tokens back. There we go. And next player goes. You could take something like this, 2 goes here for 3, and it can just stop. And you keep your 3 energy. There's no bouncing because it was a total of 3 to go here. You subtract 3 from that, there's 0, there's no bouncing going on. So if you want to bounce this character, you either need someone really heavy coming in from this space or someone from across the board, because this token can move 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You subtract 3, there's 3 bounce energy, and this one can now be bounced somewhere else. A few caveats. You can't land on a space where there's already a token of your color. The color of the piece being moved. Whether it's your team or anyone else's team, again, that's all a secret. So if this orange were here, I could not take this and land it on this same space. Can't do that. So there's some movement. I don't remember exactly where I am now with who's taking which turns in my example. You get an idea of how you want to track that type of thing. You can count as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 tokens here. There should be only 4. So you can move from further back in the queue. You don't have to just move the first token. It costs 1 energy for each token that you're covering or going over. So 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, let's go 6, 7. Sure, if I spent 1 energy, I could go 7 and move this here. And now everyone else would look around the table and say, wait a minute, you just put a black marker here. Now there's black controlling 2 B spaces. Clearly you're black. You're setting up black to win. Okay, this is one of the hazards of a hidden role game is sometimes it's super straightforward what you're trying to do. Sometimes it's a little trickier. We've got blue on 2 blue spaces. Of course, blue does not control this now. Maybe that player was just trying to keep blue from controlling spaces. Didn't actually care about white at all. Maybe, possibly. Okay, rotate this, put out the new tokens. If there's ever 3 tokens in a line and you would add a 4th token, the first one goes away. So that's typically a sign that no one cares about that color, or at least is not trying to put that color on the board, because otherwise you're going to do something to keep it from being thrown away. Now the next player goes, and you keep taking actions in the same way. There's a limit of 6 tokens per space. So if there's already 6, you can't go there. You can't bounce someone there. For the center hex, when you bounce someone there, so let's say we end up putting a 3 there, if a 4 or 5 goes in this space, then the 3 gets bounced into an adjacent space. You need something that's at least 1 higher than what's already there. If a 5 ends up in this space, it's not moving out because there's no 6 in the game. So you're going to keep taking turns until someone hits that winning condition. Eventually, someone's going to make threats and someone cannot overcome the threat and they win. The only change to gameplay based on the player count is in a 2-player game, you're each going to take 2 actions. So player A goes, player B, player A, player B, and then rotate the referee and put out new tokens and do it again. So player B would take 2 turns in a row. A, B, A, B, and then B, A, B, A, and then A, B, A, B. So you can set yourself up a little bit because you know you're going to take an action and then take another action again immediately with the tokens being moved into particular spaces. That's the general game. And it's a lot to think about because you're trying to look at where pieces can go to win and where they can potentially attack from outside the board. So this 3, or actually both of these pieces, can only go onto this space, the adjacent spaces, or anywhere on these lines. So if you're looking right now, a green token cannot land here because there's only these 2 green tokens available. Can't land here, here, here. So there's multiple spaces that are off limits, and you can immediately look ahead a bit and see, okay, green's on green, can it land on these spaces and win? It can't. There's no green that can land on here right now. There's no green adjacent to bounce onto that space. So there's 0 chance of green winning. What about black? There's only 1 black here. It can't reach this B space. So black cannot win this game, this round. You have to play a lot of defense while also doing offense. You're trying to use all the tokens to your advantage, try to suss out which colors people are. So great, maybe I can use this 5 to bounce someone and diffuse a threat while not introducing another threat by putting this out there. If I move this over here, now blue controls 2D spaces. That's not good. If we can bounce this 2 over here, then blue would win, assuming someone is blue. Okay, there's a lot going on. It's pretty much all perfect information, with the exception being you don't know which colors people are, and you don't know the order that the tokens are all coming in onto the board. That would probably be a little bit too much information if you knew what all 14 tokens were ordered in. If you're going to try to plan that far ahead, I don't think my head could handle that. There are some slight differences in the rules for variance. So let me explain that. In the 4-player team game, each player is going to get a color, and then you look at it, and then you swap those colors so you know what color you and your teammate are. That's all secret information. You don't say anything. You take turns like normal. But as soon as one of the team's winning conditions is met, if I were blue and boop, we got blue over here on D's, then I'm done. I'm out of the game and I take no further turns. So now my teammate has to fight alone to try to win with their team and win the entire game. So you're trying to set up for both teams at the same time. So ideally you're on the verge of victory and can make both happen very quickly. I haven't tried the team variant yet, but I love the concept of it because with 4 players, there's 3 other people who are taking turns and can possibly mess you up. With 2 players, you have a lot more control. So I'm excited to try the team variant, but haven't tried it yet. I have tried the 2-player variant, and it's fascinating. You're going to get 3 cards. So you're going to, oh, okay, I'm going to be yellow, green, and blue. You put those in front of you. Again, we'll pretend that we're in the middle of a game. Sure. I put these in front of me. These are my colors now. Put them over here so you can see them. And the other player is controlling these 3. And you're going to take turns. However, on a turn, you are going to move one of your tokens. So I have to move a green, blue, or yellow. Actually, I would lose the game in this situation, but we'll pretend. There we go. All right. On a turn, you're going to do something. And at the end of your move, so if I move green, I then take a yellow or blue and I add them to the end of a queue. I can't put a blue where there's already a blue or a yellow where there's yellow. So maybe I do this. And you win by having one of your colored teams occupy 3 spaces of the same color or the same letter. So I can't win by having a green here and a blue here and a yellow here. Nope, I have to have green control 3 color letters, just like a normal game. So there's a lot to think about as you're trying to plan things. You win the same way, you're just controlling 3 teams. However, you can lose if you cannot place a color into a queue because you've already used them all, or a queue does not have there's no tile of a color in a queue. So if you look around, I only have a green here. If I take a green action again, I'm only placing out yellow and blue, and then there's no green here, and I lose the game. So you are forced to take moves with your other colors. You can't only focus on one of the colors. You need a balance to what you're doing. And it's extremely difficult, but interesting, more interesting, I think, than the standard 2-player game, because you eliminate the whole issue of trying to deduce which color the other player is, and you just play with all that information. Everything is out there. You see the numbers that are coming next. You don't know where they're going to go, but they have more freedom to play where they want to play. And it provides a really interesting, involved change trying to think of all the possibilities, because the board gets pretty busy with tokens and it becomes way more challenging. But there you go. 2-player variant and a general notion of how to play Trampoline Park. There's an overview of Trampoline Park, which I played 8 times on a review copy from Soren Games Studio, 6 times with 2 players with both the regular rules and the 2-player variants, and twice with 4 players. As I mentioned, the 4-player game is a lot more chaotic because there are more people taking actions, so it's hard to have a sense of what other people are going to do unless they're really obvious with which color they are. And we found in the regular 2-player game, sometimes you just go ahead and make it clear what color you are because there's only one person who is trying to stop you. Sometimes you can set up situations where they can't stop you depending upon the colors of tokens that are in the queue and the values of those tokens and whether the opponent has any energy reserved in order to take an action that they would need to take to stop you from victory. The game looks like this colorful, chaotic family thing where you're bouncing around the park, and yet the gameplay is very much not that, because you are often trying to think, what can I do now? What is coming up in the future based on where the tokens are going to be, and where can I set up potential threats? Ideally, without setting up the opponent or one of the opponents in a multiplayer game. There's so much to consider and think about. There's definitely downtime where people just dive in and they're just staring at the board and you can watch the gears turn. And it's really interesting trying to imagine, because you're trying to imagine as well what they're trying to do, and you put yourself in their shoes as to which color they might be and what they're trying to achieve. So every move after the first, you typically have someone coming in and there's a bounce, and someone coming in, there's a bounce. Possibly multiple bounces, depending on the energy that goes out, and you can bounce multiple tokens in different directions. So you sort of have 3 attacks at once as a color lands here, and this one goes here, and this goes here, and you're trying to consider all these possibilities for what someone might be trying to do. If you don't like that hidden roll stuff, well, then you go with the 2-player variant or possibly the team variant where there's a bit more focus to it. At least I hope that's the case with the team variant. The gameplay is not at all similar to Innovation in any way. Innovation is my favorite game. 2-player is awesome, and as you add more players, you get more chaos because there's just more things happening. There's more that's just out of your control, and you're just standing in this increasingly large whirlwind. And that's kind of what this felt like, because with more players, they're just things flying around. Well, people flying all around, bouncing every which way, and you're trying to make sense of it. So with a team variant, there's less chaos. You're partnered with someone else and you're trying to make things happen equally. That's what I'm hoping. I still need to play that, but wanted to give an overview of what I've tried so far. As I mentioned, the 2-player variant I found fantastic just because the colors are not an issue. You don't have to worry about giving someone an accidental victory. I love Leo Colavini's clans. There's a hidden color mechanism in that game. Familion Bond, that's the same thing. Each player represents a hidden color, and those colors are going to score points. That's different in that the other team is scoring points, and ideally you can try to spread those points around. If I'm giving points each time to blue and yellow, and then blue and red, and blue and green, well, blue is advancing ahead of all those colors, and it can still work to my advantage. In this game, the other team, the other color would just win, and that's the end of it. So it's a bit more risk to putting colored tiles out there. So every move you're making as you're trying to set yourself up for something, you have to ensure that you're not setting up someone else. So you're considering all these possibilities of where tokens can go and how much energy do you need and where the threats are, and there's so much going on. It's fascinating, but with the 2-player variant, my favorite, and then 2-player regular, and then 4-player. We'll see. I haven't tried 3, haven't tried team. We'll get those in there. The graphics are not set. As I mentioned, this is a second edition of the game, but I've been emailing with the designer. They were looking for feedback because they're trying to pitch this game to other publishers because, as you may know, this game from an Iranian publisher, well, it's not going to get distribution in the United States. In fact, this game came to me via someone in Germany who received the game and then forwarded it to me. It's a bummer that, wow, that's a mild way to say it. It's unfortunate that we have that sort of embargo against Iran. Iranian publishers had issues shipping games to Spiel because the companies, as I understand it, were worried about getting cut off from U.S. business because they did business with a company in Iran, and then U.S. companies, the U.S. government may decide, nope, you can't do business with U.S. companies now because you're dealing with someone in Iran. All sorts of issues, completely irrelevant in terms of the value of the game itself. The game design is a fantastic thinky puzzle that you can really get into. It could definitely be improved with the presence of a first player marker. If there were a second referee token inside, well then one could be a first player marker. You definitely need that with 4 players because people can easily lose track of whose turn it is because you're bouncing someone and you're bouncing things out. If someone goes in the white trampoline, then that may cause someone to bounce out, and there's no further ripple effects down the line, but often just the thought process and how you're doing things and the rotation of the first player, it can be a bit much at times. So if that were in there, that'd be great. If there were, for example, I mentioned this to the designer, if there were a symbol, right? I mentioned it's harder to see the letter attacks, the letter threats than the color threats. But if there were a symbol on here, with all the A's having a certain symbol, maybe it'd be a bit easier. Maybe if the letters were a bit smaller too, because you can fit 6 tokens on a tile, the tendency for everyone is to always put a token in the center. And then you have to be like, well, you can't see the letter then, you got to put it on the side. But as you get multiple tokens on there, it still gets a little crowded, and then it becomes a little harder to see. So if there were something in the middle, smaller letters, a little graphic symbol, something to make it stand out more. Maybe you just go away with letters completely. I don't know. You need letters and something else. Something on the periphery. There's all these possibilities for what to do, but those are sort of little details to work out in terms of having the optimal presentation, because the gameplay is really engaging. It just takes a couple of games to get a handle on the movement system, where you're trying to manage your energy and just internalize it. The energy to move this figure, it's its weight of the token. 1 for each person it's jumping over in the queue. 1 for each tile it's going to. These are the spaces that it can reach. This will be the jumping energy or the bouncing energy when it lands there, which will then bounce these other things, which will then set up control based on where these tokens land, and so on. So the gameplay is solid and it's all there. It's a lot to absorb and figure out the first times you play. Hopefully this design will get distribution or signed by another publisher and then can be introduced to other people in the world. I hope that can happen. That's why I wanted to feature this game, because it's a solid design that I would like to see available in more places. So maybe I can help make it happen through a non-US publisher. So who wants to take up that challenge? Go ahead. I hope you can do it, because it'd be great to see this shared and played elsewhere. Good luck.